Episode 19. Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode of Reddit Readings. Today we are listening to stories from survivors of comas, hearing what it was like and what they dreamed about. Enjoy. Reddit Readings, Episode 19. Survivors of comas. What was it like? The worst thing, in my opinion, is the atrophy that happens while you're not moving. I was in a coma for a month, and had to build my muscles up to be able to walk and climb steps again. I think I made it from my door to the next one the first time they got me out of bed, and I cried because of the mixture of physical and mental pain. The first time I tried to climb a flight of stairs, I just went at it like normal and was exhausted before coming close to the top. The rehab person had to explain to me that for now it was getting both feet on the step before going for the next one, like how old people climb stairs. It ended up taking over a year before my body was anywhere close to normal. I also had this skin peeling on my hands and feet shortly after I woke up. I was in a medically induced coma for 3 weeks. All I remember is what it's like when they start pulling you out. I was having very vivid and strange dreams mixed with reality. Then one day I was able to recognize it was now September, but I remembered entering the hospital in August. They should have waited to wake you up when September ended. I was in a medically induced coma for a week or so, back in 2008, after going through a 22-hour surgery to remove the tumor from my abdominal area. I ended up spending about 3 months in the surgical ICU recovering from that, before being sent upstairs for 3 more months in the hospital receiving chemotherapy. I still have PTSD today from my time in the ICU. A big part of it was something called ICU delirium. Basically, it's when the bright, always on, lights, constant beeps and odd combinations of medicines mess with your systems and, basically, make you temporarily crazy. I still remember the hallucinations I had there more vividly than dreams I had this week. Ugh. A motorcycle accident left me in a medically induced coma for about 2 weeks. I had weird dreams. I didn't know what had happened to me until I was woken up. I didn't know time had passed. I still remember the dreams. Do share. I was a skeleton with just eyes, and I was laying on a mortician table, rewatching my past memories on a bunch of televisions above me. I couldn't move. The other one was me frozen in ice, watching people walk on top of me but not being able to get their attention. It terrified me just being left there. My sister was in a coma for over a month from a car accident. She was asleep in the back seat on a road trip and her friend flipped the car on the freeway, trying to avoid something on the road by swerving, but in a panic she hit the gas instead of the brake. She had a bruise on her brain which was kinda like her being mentally handicapped, but each day she got better. Now she's completely recovered and back to normal. When she woke up, she told us she had a dream where some mystery guy shot her, and that's what she thought happened with no recollection of the car accident. Had a major open heart surgery, almost died and went into a 2-week coma after resuscitation. Being in the coma felt like sleeping soundly, to be honest. Had an endless series of random dreams. The last dream I had before waking up was that I was riding escalators for way too long, so long that I even thought to myself in the dream, that's strange, why aren't I waking up? In a coma for 42 days. I don't remember a thing. Did your body feel all weird and weak when you woke up? My first memory after waking was being loaded on an ambulance to go to rehab. I couldn't speak and barely hold a pencil. I instantly knew I was paralyzed but was good with it because my mind was there. My accident happened on the 10th of May and I've been home for 4 weeks. You're paralyzed right now? Yes. T2 T3 vertebrae. Crushed spine not severe. I'm a paraplegic. So is it chest down? Your arms work? Nipples down? I have no feeling but yes my arms and fingers work. Damn bro. At least you're alive. Also huge win that you still got your hands and arms. Yes. I consider it all a blessing. My son was in a medically induced coma for 11 days following an accident. He remembers nothing of those 12 days, and the 2 weeks following are still hazy after 4 years. He was struck by a speeding car while skateboarding. He suffered a severe traumatic brain injury, jaw broken in 4 places, molars knocked clean out of their sockets, broken clavicle, rib, pelvis, ruptured spleen, carotid arteries nearly ruptured, needed a chest as well as a peg feeding tube. I'm grateful he has no recollection of any of this. I was in a coma approximately 2 weeks. My medical records say Glasgow coma scale of 7. I don't remember anything. I remember waking up tied down to a bed in a hospital. The nurse told me that I had tried to get up and that if I got up and got hurt he would be responsible. When I had the accident, I had a closed head injury, and I was paralyzed on my right side. They left me tied down for a while until I was transferred to Army Hospital. I had to learn how to walk and talk again. I was able to talk when I woke up, but I was stuttering enough to require speech therapy for a few months. It took a while before I could walk again, and a few months until I could leave the hospital. One of the things I remember was the orientation tests when I woke up. The doctors or nurses ask simple questions like what is your name, what day is it, where were you born, who is the president. I believe I may have answered Ronald Reagan, a few years after George H.W. Bush 41 was elected. I have a weird memory of the scene from the movie Born in East LA where they ask who the president is and he answered that actor. I had went from running 10 miles per day to not being able to walk. My mom said that she had talked to me while I was at St. Joseph Barrow Neurological Hospital, but I only remember the days after I came out of the coma before I was transferred to the Army Hospital. My mom came to the hospital, and she would push me around in the wheelchair. I never regained my physical abilities after the accident. I ride a bicycle a lot, but I never really started running again and I never regained my strength after the accident. Most people would never notice anything wrong with me, but there was enough damage for me to be medically retired from the army. It has been 30 years since the accident, so don't remember the details that well. Fucking weird. I was out for 9 days. Coma dreams are intense. Coming back from it was super strange too. A lot of questioning reality. Do you remember any of the dreams? Vividly. I won the Super Bowl after I built the arena and had an operation to become a quarterback. Go Cowboys. I created an app that helped you poop. I shot my grandfather dead. I had a vagina surgically tattooed onto the right side of my scrotum. Swallowed a bumper. Like I said. Weird shit. I got in a car accident in 2016. No head trauma. Thank God. But I was in and out of consciousness for about a week. I have 3 memories and flashes of asking for water about 1 trillion times. The 3 memories were: 1. My friend Rosa coming to see me. I think I woke up for like a minute and went back to oblivion. 2. Waking up and having a tingling feeling. I fractured 4 or 5 vertebrae and had a burst fracture on my L4 in my right leg. Notifying my mom or dad. Honestly don't remember. Who then got a doctor who promptly told everyone to leave, then I was back out again. 3. Bitching to my parents about one specific nurse who I blamed for not letting me have water in my haze of drugs. I was out for 2.5 days from an unintentional overdose, aka why the pharmacy always asks if you have any questions about that pill nowadays. I have no memory for about a day after waking up, but my family said I had some pretty rough things to say after my eyes opened. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. How do I know I'm not in one right now? And you're my brain messing with me. I was in a coma for 6 days following a car accident. When I woke up, I was, for some reason, very angry, and my mom and my girlfriend's boss didn't have a reason to be before. Never understood why I woke up mad at only these 2 people. Otherwise, I was in a good mood. Turns out, my mom was in the room with my girlfriend and kept insisting to that I would be in a wheelchair and have to be spoon-fed the rest of my life. My girlfriend's boss had called her 3 days after the event, ringing her out saying, "I need to know when you're going to be back because we need the staff." The doctors said that when someone is in a coma, they can still hear what's going on around them. However, because their brain is still healing, and they aren't technically conscious, they can still feel emotions but never remember what was said. I am also a huge believer in proven theory. That's just a word I made up. But basically I believe that if someone is going to say something, they better have some form of proof to back it up. Then my car accident happened. What I seen, I expect others like old me to argue. My grandmother passed away just under a year prior. My one grandfather passed away about 12 years earlier. And my other grandfather I never actually got to meet. But I also recall being in a dark room and seeing all 3 of them. I ran to give them a hug, for obvious reasons. But they kept backing up saying, "Not yet. I'm sure science will say something that makes sense." But I refuse to believe it. I was put into a medically induced coma for a week after I got my shit rocked in a crash. It sucked balls. 1. I could hear what was going on, but had zero ways to communicate. 2. The hallucinations nightmares was really fucked, but that's to expected from anyone who goes into a coma due to a traumatic event. And 3. I couldn't tell what was real and what was a dream for a very long time, and still have moments where I have loud and severe auditory hallucinations that convince me I'm back in my non-consensual nap time. Also, something that isn't well known is, after an extended period of strong as shit meds and not moving, besides when the nurses roll you like a Cali roll, your muscles forget how to work. It took me about a month of rehab to get enough strength to lift a large cup of water, but it was absolutely necessary, and although it was scary as shit, I survived my less than 10% survival chance thanks to the fucking amazing, strong, and caring nurses and specialists. I was able to return to my babies and my future husband. Still, 0 out of 10 would not recommend. I woke up in the hospital 3 days after an unintentional overdose of opiates and benzos. I remember projectile vomiting in my apartment, then waking up 3 days later with my girlfriend by my side. She showed up to find me unresponsive and barely breathing on my couch. As far as the coma itself goes, it was basically like falling asleep and waking up 3 days later. It was initially very confusing. I unfortunately didn't stop using drugs for another year and a half. My cousin was hit by a car when he was in his early teens and was in a coma for about 6 weeks. He's in his late 20s now. He lives in a group home, has the mental capacity of child, is prone to, often violent, fits of rage and has very little impulse control. He cannot work a normal job. He will never be able to live alone. He cannot live at home because of his violent rages. Not his fault, and will never have a normal life. Comas aren't like the movies. Brain damage is a bitch. It was bizarre. Last thing I remember was the respiratory tech came into my general floor hospital room to give me a treatment. Next thing I know, she is calling and the floor nurses say we have to get her to ICU now. Someone said we need doctor's orders, and the tech said I don't care, we are going now. 7 days later the breathing tube is removed and I start coming to reality. The first day I was so out of it I thought Oprah had found a cure for cancer. I also for some reason decided to attack a nurse, tried to run and promptly fell face first into a counter. I broke my nose. The weeks following were very strange. I developed a fear of falling asleep and had mild hallucinations. All in all 0 out of 10. I met a guy who was in an accident and spent 3 months in a coma. He said he spent 5 years in his mind, got his shit together and got married. Then he woke up a paraplegic. I fell into a coma after I got very drunk. Fell over, cracked my head and had a bleed on my brain, had the last rites said as well. I was out for about 21 hours or so. I remember nothing of the coma, just woke up with no recollection of what happened. Was a mixture of very confused, disorientated and had a standard shitty hangover. I was out for a week. After my TBI, have zero memory of anything. Just a giant 404 error. Not one, but my cousin was in one for a month. He woke up, looked around and began to scream like a lunatic, and saying someone's name. However, after that day of waking up he didn't remember a single thing. The name he was screaming was Anna, and no one there knew who Anna was. The doctors believe it was a deep coma dream. He spent 3 weeks after that shaking. He had a lot of issues walking properly and forming more than 2 sentences without stuttering like crazy. I'm very close with him, and when I ask him about Anna, his mood changes drastically and all he says is I don't wanna talk about it. Pursuing it further would make him break down crying or make him scream at you. He's a lot better now, other than when he's asked who Anna was. Edit. Before people ask, his coma was the result of a car accident. Was out for 48 hours. I don't remember anything. It was like a time warp where I closed my eyes and then opened them and 2 days passed. It was absolutely beautiful. Well, the near-death experience. Mine was only like 3 days. It was pretty surreal coming back and then immediately very depressing after experiencing that peacefulness. Messed me up really bad for at least a year and still not who I was anymore. I was about 7 when it happened. I was playing around on a swing and apparently fell over and hit my head. Also swallowed my tongue in the process. Fortunately people around were quick to react. Somebody reached down my throat and took out my tongue and called an ambulance. I don't really remember it all that. I just remember waking up at the hospital the next day. My mother was standing next to me, and as I woke up she started asking me questions like about what my name was or what her name was. I remember being really confused. I was like, "Mum, what sort of silly question is that?" Turns out, I've woken up at some point in the ambulance and had no idea who my mum and dad were, as they were in the ambulance with me. Definitely not a fun experience, but the worst part was that the doctors said I couldn't eat chocolate for like a month after that. Thanks for listening to Reddit Readings episode 19, and if you enjoyed it, consider subscribing and leaving a rating.